Hello, hello, good evening, good morning, good whatever, wherever you are, people. You have found your way to twitch.tv/speedgaming, where we are bringing you a Link to the Past Randomizer tournament round of 16 match between P-Train and Yagamoth. To provide a bit of context here, we started with a 64-man bracket after a 128-man group. And we got to this match. Yagamoth took 2-1 victories over Matt 7898 and Aussie 101. And P-Train took a 2-1 victory over Top Life and a 2-0 win over Willard J. Bradley to set this up. And this is game 2 with Yagamoth having won game 1. Calling this race today, I am Reg. My partner is Hammer Bro. And Hammer, I'm seeing a sword on this menu. Why don't you tell people what that means?
Yeah, so one of the cool things, if you are unfamiliar with it thus far, is that the loser of whatever game it is, should the series continue, gets to make a change to just the settings that we have for the race. So P-Train, having lost the first race, decided that he was going to go ahead and do Assured Sword. So we are starting with a sword today. In terms of the item locations, does not change anything. There are still 4 swords sitting in the overworld. Or not in the overworld specifically, just in Hyrule somewhere. But once we get the butter, if we do stumble upon what would end up being our 5th sword, we'll just get a green 20 rupee for that. So, doesn't really change anything functionally in terms of logic, other than the fact that you start with a sword. The irony is that frequently, you end up looking for that Master Sword for your Go Mode item. Hopefully that won't happen today. I'd like to see our runners get sword upgrades relatively cleanly so we can have some really, really nice boss fights, get some more of the advanced strats that higher end swords allow for. But we'll see how it goes, and we are off.
Yep. Nothing special in the first chest, but you did call out the advanced sword strats, and we did see P-Train practicing his vanilla no major glitches style Mothula fight with that tempered sword before the race started. So early tempered sword would definitely bring the runners a lot more into their comfort zone with vanilla speedruns, but Rando can let you do a lot of silly things.
Yep, that early check for Yagamoth being 3 bombs over in Link's house, that's actually somewhat helpful. You do need 3 bombs to clear out everything in Kakariko. And those are bombs that P-Train's going to be looking for, as the uncle gives us the hammer. Alright then.
That hammer's a solid find. It doesn't mean quite as much as it does with the Assured Sword, because you're guaranteed a weapon regardless, as guards are dropping bombs left and right. P-Train is not going to have access to that before Kakariko. And with the Tier 1 tree pull just being hearts and the bush crab being arrows, he's going to need to find some soon before he goes to the village if he wants to get all the checks.
Yep, speaking of checks there, we got a map check on Yagamoth's side. We had a red pendant at Desert, and the other 2 in the Light World are just regular old crystals.
That's pretty normal. 3 in 10, about a 1/3 chance. So 1 pendant on the Light World, pretty average. P-Train did not find bombs in the Lost Woods. Gonna save and quit, get some here. Yagamoth is taking his sword and hammer into the castle. Let's see if P-Train... Okay, he's following suit.
Alright, well the thing that I feared happening isn't going to happen, since we got the Master Sword right there in Escape. So, assuming the P-Train continues through, which we'll see what he does once Uncle gives him the hammer, then P-Train will already have the Master Sword, which is all we technically need to defeat Ganon. So, no sword mode today.
That's always reassuring. I would expect P-Train to follow into the castle since he's got multiple weapons at this point to be able to clear it. There's really no reason not to if you're coming up here for Uncle.
Yeah, it makes sense, especially with the fact that we have the sword and the hammer. You only really need 1, but you've got 2 solid weapons here. Just go ahead, clear everything out, and let's be done with it.
Yeah, the big question will be... I guess they won't find the small key here in Zelda Cell. The randomizer will never place it there. But will they death warp onto the Dark Cross to try and get that key and go all the way to the back, or are they going to save that?
I'll say Yagamoth probably not, since he did not leave that green guard alive. We'll see what P-Train does.
Yeah. Actually, we haven't seen a map at this point, have we? It was all items in the front?
I believe you are correct. No map seen yet.
Yeah, in that case, then probably wouldn't see the Dark Cross there regardless, but try to save that for when we drop into the back with the gloves later, as we're very likely to see. And then just judge whether that dark chest is a map or a key based on what's back there.
Yeah, because at that point you're looking at a 50% chance of not even needing that chest out of the 2 chests we don't need out of 4 that are back there. So it's not the best gamble in terms of odds. Nice 50.
Yeah, not going to see Aghanim down for that. But Yagamoth actually approaching the Lost Woods with 10 bombs. P-Train didn't find any bombs when he came here earlier, but Yaga's going to follow this right into the village, I would expect. No reason not to.
Yep, and P-Train did leave that green guard alive, but nope, gonna go ahead and save and quit.
Yeah, and then he's got a decision of where to go. I would imagine this is south route to Kakariko now that he's got bombs, but going dead south, okay, that's the play for him. He's putting off Kakariko, maybe hoping to find a bottle, maybe hoping to find a flute. South Shore is a very dense set of checks as well, even if not quite as much so as Kakariko Village.
Yeah, this is a play that we've seen a couple of runners make. It is one of the varying metas that's going around. Not super commonly used, but if you can manage to find a bottle or a flute or something, as you said, that kind of makes Kakariko a little easier to get more through, then you're not orphaning that check, and it's just a little bit cleaner because you don't have to walk all the way back here. As we do get a Moon Pearl in Blind's Hut.
Oh, got a glove too.
All right, as we get Dark World access in Blind's Hut, I will amend my prior statement.
That's a bit unlucky for P-Train, because that could have been something he found in the South Shore. Then he'd be able to just south to north his way through Kakariko and end at the Dark World portal. Of course, he is still liable to do that, and he'll just get the gloves late. All right, well, not even late, really, but he'll get the gloves at the end of that route. That's just not an advantage he'll be able to have over Yaga at this point.
Right, and as Yaga does find a bottle here in the well, and the flute. Okay, yeah, so P-Train's not going to find anything he's looking for to make this a little easier.
Yeah. Kak with all the goods as usual. It's 13 items with the Sick Kid as a potential 14th that we're seeing in this seed. So a lot of checks, and since they're all accessible from the start of the game, so-called Sphere 1 checks, chances are always good that there's stuff there.
Alright, so this is interesting. P-Train went ahead and did the Dam and Agnes Cave, and is now going to, I would presume, do a mini Moldorm Cave and the Ice Rod Cave. Really going through pretty much all of these checks before heading into Kakariko. Unfortunately, there's going to be a bit of time loss here because of it, since a lot of the items that we do need are in Kakariko.
Yeah,
that Moldorm was out for blood.
Yeah. Most of the time loss P-Train's having here will come in the form of having to save and quit instead of being able to use the flute to get around, which is not massive by any means. And the Aegeanus Cave play that we saw him do is something that I think has become more popular as this tournament's gone on. And it's basically a metagaming type of play. Do you choose to isolate that location and gamble that it has nothing? Or do you gamble on it having something to try to get an edge over your opponent?
That is a fair point, but another disadvantage there for P-Train that we have to consider is that Agha's Cave and the Ice Rod Cave are both a bit of a hike that Yagamoth is not going to need to take with that flute.
Well, flute to 8 and then walk up to Ice Rod Cave is still sort of slow. It's a little faster than walking from Mini Moldrum Cave, but not hugely so.
That's fair. We'll see what ends up happening here. We did have Yagamoth grab the book as well, so that's kind of interesting. As we get a green goo in the Ice Rod Cave, so that's one thing the P-Train was looking for. Unfortunately, didn't end up being something specific. Are we going to get an Eastern check as well? No, okay, he's just coming up from the south. All right, never mind.
Yeah, when you're doing late CAC like this and have already done the Lost Woods, there is no reason not to come up from the south. Actually, I guess there is. The only reason would be is if you think boots are in Kakariko, which gambling on that is, But walking from Link's house to the south is faster than walking from Sanctuary, as long as you're not doing the Lost Woods.
Cool. I will keep that in the back of my head then. Neither of our runners at this point have anything even remotely resembling Zora money, so that play is going to be kind of out of logic. I don't think that Yagamoth is going to fake flipper here, but might still choose to with the Moon Pearl.
Yeah, the fake flipper play isn't that bad. The glove does put the Zora check itself into logic, and he can just gamble on finding a 300 pack either at Hobo or in the Waterfall Cave or similar. So it's not the end of the world, although it would feel a little bad to go up there and then not be able to afford Zora.
Yes. There are, I think, 6 of those. Fully, yeah, I think there's 6 altogether. We are seeing that flute come out. Not sure where Yagamoth is going.
Pipe Cave.
Okay, cool. So we're gonna get early Dark World. Alrighty, we will see what happens to this.
Yep, and I am expecting P-Train to go to the Village of Outcast portion of the Dark World. Map check puts Pendants Mire and Skull Woods, 5-6, Thieves Town Turtle Rock. Not a terrible layout.
Yeah, it's not. We could hope for a little better, but overall that's not bad. It's nice to see that Thieves Town being a crystal is nice. Turtle Rock being a crystal, slightly less so, but hopefully we'll find that Ice Rod before too long.
Yeah, and there's one of those 300 packs.
Yep, French vanilla location for it, actually. Normally the thief in the front gives it to you, but he stuck it in a chest instead.
Yep. Other than that, though, the only thing of note in that cave was a small shield, so Yaga's not even taking the Dark World any further there. He's just back to the Sank, and this is going to be the back of escape for him.
Yeah, it's a good thing to do. It gets it out of the way.
Yeah, and we'll learn whether that Dark Cross chest is holding an item or not.
Meanwhile, we have a released Quacken on P-Train's side, and there's the key. So, yep, we have something in Dark Cross.
Yeah, and Yagamoth is not leaving that behind. He's going to have to do this in the dark, but not terribly difficult, and he's going to have the water and his sword to guide him at least somewhat.
Yeah, it's not too bad. Would be a little bit easier with full health here, as the Master Sword beams are nice for taking out rats that are being annoying and not being where they're supposed to be. But shouldn't be too difficult. He did get the key rat, so at this point it's just not getting bopped around too much as you grab that chest in the Dark Cross room. Come up here.
Yeah, and if you look on some of these sewer rooms, I guess we're past most of them now, but when he was in the actual wet sewer rooms, you could see the water around him. And I don't know what that was.
Yeah, I didn't see it either, so I think we're going to get a check here of a menu, maybe?
Chat's saying it's rupees. So
Gotcha, okay.
I'm guessing they probably saw his rupee count go up and I just didn't notice.
Yeah, and he would have heard it, so.
Yeah. P-Train's giving us the pedestal check for going to the Dark World. With this layout, there are a fair few things that cannot be there, but always one-offs like the mirror possible.
Well, there's another one of your 300s.
Yep. So, not going to be clearing pendants for that. Still might clear them just because the bosses are holding items, but that's a lot less of a thing to worry about until you actually get to those dungeons.
Yep, and in case you missed it, Yagamoth is doing the same checks. We had a little high five there in the Lost Woods.
Yeah. With Pendant Skull Woods, there's no real great time to check the ped. So when you're having to take the long way around to hammer your way to the Dark World portal up here, that's going to be the best time to do it.
So I am kind of surprised that P-Train didn't at least dip Skull Woods to try and get those 2 items out of there, especially because we know Pedestal is off the table. You can go ahead and knock that out, and then just not have to worry about it at all ever again.
Yeah, and it's the front of Skull Woods is one of those locations that a lot of runners, tend to think of analogous to overworld locations, and you can see Yagamoth's doing it, but there's not any guaranteed items in the front. It could all be keys, maps, and compasses.
Yeah, that is a very fair point, as so far the Village of Outcasts is kind of loaded. We had flippers in the chess game, and then blue mail sitting here. So, you want to make a guess at maybe an ice rod in the bombable hut?
Especially since we've already got Cane of Burna in our inventory, that would be pretty great.
It would be. It also limited the potential blue items that we could have gotten, although I guess Mirror is blue enough.
Yeah, I'd call Mirror blue. Yagamoth actually grabbing the full magic out of that bombable room, not letting the Wallmaster grab him for a quick trip out of the dungeon.
Well, the Wallmaster got its trip anyways.
And he wanted out, so I'm not sure why he didn't let himself get grabbed the first time, but now it's the front for him.
And with the Cane of Burna there, and the low health that both of our runners have for Dark World stuff, especially with the green mail that Yagamoth is currently sitting at. Oh, hello, Mitts. Why is it always like this?
Value Woods is the old meme, but still pretty applicable. Like, the front of Skull Woods is the Sphere 1 analog, or the Dark World analog of Sphere 1, so always decent odds, and that's both items, so Yagamoth never going to have to come back to that dungeon.
Yep, and that is something that P-Train is definitely going to have to get to at some point.
Yeah, those mitts, they block the Dark Mountain, which we can't even get to right now, and would only have a couple checks for us. They block Ice Palace, which again can't get in the front door. And they block the Mire area, which we do have the flute. We could go there, and there could be things there. But he'll have to get there at some point. I'm not sure it'll be the end of the world if he doesn't get there soon.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And depending on what ends up being our Go Mode item, it could actually help. Because right now, like having Go Mode mitts is not a terrible thing to do. It takes out certain stuff like Smith Chain. It takes out the last 3 vanilla dungeons in their entirety. You don't have to worry about them. Don't have to go in. Nothing. It also takes out certain checks unless you have, stuff like the mirror. Without the mirror, King's Tomb's out of logic. That sort of stuff. So depending on where our items are, it could actually be really nice.
Yeah, and in that specific regard, I would be eyeing Misery Mire here. I would expect that to probably be Yagamoth's play after he finishes the Dark World loop as far as he wants to carry it. But that assumes we don't find any other progression to guide them between now and then, and that is a long way off.
Yeah, that's a fair point. We also do have the eastern area, which our guys aren't going to want to go to without that bow. But between Pod sitting there in the Dark World and then Sahasrah's Closet in Eastern, that's not a small amount of items.
Yeah, I would almost expect them to want to hold out for, well, either the bow that you mentioned or the mirror. They have the flute, so the mirror's not that huge of a save. You can just flute to 5 repeatedly, but it is still a nice and convenient time save there, just to be able to combine those dungeons. But bow would obviously be ideal.
Yeah, I feel like if we see one of them grab the mirror at some point soon, that might increase the desire to wait for bow just to have the perfect Eastern Pod combination. Alright, Blind informing us that a novice skier often jumps to contusions.
That physically hurts in more ways than one.
Speaking of contusions here, Blind getting absolutely demolished. Putting one hit on P-Train, but that is small potatoes as opposed to the 9 the P-Train gave back. So we have our first crystal and another bottle, just in case, we needed another one of those.
Yeah, the great thing about having excess bottles in this version is that they greatly sped up the animation for throwing it into fairy fountains and getting free stuff. So having excess bottles doesn't feel nearly as bad if you want to try to get free potions that way.
Yeah, that's a fair point, because that is a really, really long, arduous. As we only get 2 useful items in Village of Outcasts, unfortunately, but that is a really long, arduous sequence of events. Meanwhile, P-Train is deciding not to go into Skull Woods at all, so we're going to get a skip of the Smith Chain, which Yagamoth will probably do.
Yeah, it's looking like Yagamoth will wind up taking the Smith down to Stumpy, get that item there, and then he's already done the Hype Cave, so he'll just save and quit from there, turn the Smith in, and make his next play from there.
6 digs for a full heart to go from 5 to 6. I'm going to say that's a good digging game.
Yeah, I'll take that every time, personally.
I'm sure we're more happy to take it than either the runners are, given that they are really, really good at this game. But I feel like even so, 6th heart for 6 digs, yeah, we'll take that. As Stumpy gives us Ether. Obviously, we have no idea right now if that's going to be a required medallion or just a nice little golden coin we get to keep in our back pocket. But we will find out sooner or later.
Yeah. Yagamoth is not that far from done with Thieves Town at this point. And like I said before, when he finishes his overworld loop, I would expect his next play after that to be the Mire area. And at that point, we'll at least learn whether it's needed for the Pendant Dungeon. Still have no way to the east side of the mountain to check that for Turtle Rock, though.
Yeah, that's kind of the big monkey on our back right now, is that we don't have the mirror and we don't have the hook shot. So all those items are just kind of sitting there staring at us going, we're here, but you can't do anything yet.
You know what else those 2 items are fairly well blocking is those 6 items in Swamp Palace. But nobody wants to go get those yet.
I feel like no one wants to go get those ever. That's just kind of a, hey, let's go in here when I don't need anything, and let's just skip all the chests, except for that very first one, and whatever Argus drops, and be done with it.
Yeah, that's the dream, but it's a dream because it doesn't happen all the time. And P-Train's actually following his Hype Cave play up to Pyramid, presumably going to be Catfish after this, just knocking out the entirety of the Dark Overworld that he can reach with his current set of items.
Yep, very noticeably skipping Pod there, as we see Red Mail. Gonna go ahead and skip that, okay. I don't know that I would have skipped it with only 6 hearts. Obviously, P-Train much better than me at this game. So Probably sound decision on his end of things, but red Mal with 6 hearts is nice, at least for me.
A while back, this community had a tournament where the runners were given the spoiler log to the seed beforehand and had a few minutes to route it out. And I think from that tournament, like part of that was routing in how many hearts, mail, whatever safeties you need. I think 7 hearts and blue mail was pretty common for grabbing. So we're already on 6, and this being rando, we're sure to find a few more along the way.
That's the hope, at least. So nothing in hammer pegs. And we're going to get a catfish check here, which will be interesting. Well, just 10 arrows and a save and quit. All right, so Pod thus far is going to be untouched for P-Train, as well as Skull Woods. Yagamoth's going to go ahead and get that dig game out of the way.
Yeah. No bow, no lamp makes Pod a lot less of appealing of a play than it could be. Like, obviously, these guys don't need lamp to maneuver those dark rooms in Palace of Darkness, but just it makes it logically less appealing.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I just feel like I think personally, Pod has burned me a whole lot, so I try to lean towards going there sooner rather than later. But I think that's just my personal experience, so we'll see how it goes. As P-Train does make the same decision as Yagamoth did, we're going to go ahead and get another Dark Cross check.
Yep. And this time we'll be able to hear the rupee counter tink up, so we'll know for sure that it's cash. I think this is going to be the end of Yagamoth's Dark World tour for now. Yes, it will be. So he'll turn in that Smith. And then I'm expecting Misery Mire area from him, but remains to be seen what he'll actually do.
Yeah, we're at this point we're kind of sitting at the Mire area. We could go up the mountain if we really wanted to for knowledge of one check that we can actually get and one check that we can get but is out of logic. And then there's the eastern area, which I mentioned before, that's absolutely loaded, but we can't really clear anything or complete anything, I should say. So kind of want to shy away from that. And there's the rupees. So I don't know. I feel like they're really avoiding that, as you know, both of our runners are, but I don't know how long that's going to be sustainable.
Yeah. And I suppose this is a good time to mention that in the last race, I would say it was ultimately decided by P-Train making a couple checks out of order relative to what Yagamoth did, which resulted in him double dipping a couple locations and creating a gap he couldn't come back from. So if that's on his mind, we may see him try to shy away from double dips this seed. But ultimately, like, Randomizer's a game where the routing is just about the order you do things to begin with. Like, both of these runners will have to go to the same places to find the same items to clear the 7 crystals, and anything on top of that is basically just excess.
Oh, and there's that. So you were absolutely correct about that 300 rupee horde sitting in along the way to Zora. We did get a complete and total skip of the hobo, so keep that in the back of your heads for now.
Hobo's a lot easier to get back to than Zora himself. I'm not too concerned about that skip.
That's a fair point. I'm just trying to keep it in my head because I am not great at doing so. As we get a big 20 up on top of the rock and a big 20 inside of it as well.
So mountain, not useful so far. Well, I guess there is still Spike Cave. P-Train is heading over to check. We've got the Cane of Burna. We can do that. But
yep,
other than that, Sorry. I was going to say, other than that, all he's gotten out of this so far is that save and quit point.
Yeah, that location is actually something that I completely and totally forgot about, which, yeah, that's happened several times before. So, good on P-Train for remembering it.
Oh, this is dangerous. But Cane of Burna does not have the same startup lag that the Cape does, so he gets through and just gets a shield for his trouble.
Meanwhile, there was absolutely nothing useful up on Desert Ledge, so we are checking out the mire area, including the fact that it is quick.
Okay, good sign. Because it's not like we could get in the front door anyways without the boots or the hook shot to get across the gap. But just knowing that we can't even open that dungeon is actually fairly reassuring with it being a pendant.
Yeah, but you know, that book does put Desert itself in the logic, which P-Train is not going to do at the moment. I thought for a moment we might get P-Train doing it, but we are instead going to finally get that eastern area check.
Yeah, and this is the density play for him. Like, there's no location in the game with more items as close together as this. Especially because once he... I say especially, but it's more of an although once he finishes Eastern Palace and gets as many checks in there as he can, he'd flute back to 5 for Palace of Darkness if he wanted to continue this area. And at that point, I would hesitate to even call them connected areas.
Yeah, it's connected only in so much as if you have the mirror, they're connected. But without it, they are two separate journeys. And with that flute there, I think we might not be seeing an Eastern play.
Nope, you're right. Or is he going back to 5 and is he choosing pod instead? Yeah, that's going to be what's happening here. So I guess, I don't remember, does P-Train have a potion?
P-Train did have a potion, but had to use the green goo at the very least in Spike Cave. So I didn't see what the Waterfall Fairy gave us. Off the top of my head, I did not remember because I was looking at the other screen at that point. But I don't think so.
Yeah, the Waterfall Cave just gave us a B, so that's nothing. So P-Train going to have to resort to the non-potion camera unlock mimic clip, which we saw Yagamoth practicing pre-race, if people were here to see that. Did not see P-Train practicing that, but if he can do it, then he can get around the bow lock.
Yeah, that's a good point. We will see how that goes, because I don't really know what P-Train's familiarity with glitches is.
P-Train is good at video games.
I mean, I get that. Alright, so far we're not bow locked. Although without the mirror, this is the routing here is going to be slightly more annoying, as we can't just repeatedly mirror out to save ourselves time.
Yeah, like he's doing pod with literally none of the items I would want if I were coming into pod. Like, if I could trade that hammer for bow plus mirror, I would do so in a heartbeat.
Oh yeah, because the hammer only really locks you being able to complete the dungeon. You can get everything else, though. That bow could foreseeably unlock a bunch of stuff. Especially if you don't have the potion there, or don't want to do a potion glitch, or aren't very good at the mimic clip, or, you know, whatever needs to be done. For those in chat who are asking, the mitts were sitting in Pendant Skull Woods, because of course they are.
Yep. And P-Train made the very reasonable, but ultimately not quote-unquote correct decision to skip that location when he first went to the Dark World. So he is without the mitts until he gets up there.
But to be fair, so far Yagamoth has made a few mitts checks, and they have not come in handy thus far.
Yep, Mire area was a total bust. Smith was also a bust. So, chat's already saying it, but we're basically looking at Eastern Desert Pod, the dungeons, or the purple chest.
Yep, that's about all we have left at this point. Oh, and Hobo.
No, Yagamoth just did Hobo, and it wasn't anything.
Oh, I missed that. And there's the clip, so no issue there.
Yeah. He's good at video games. That's about all I need to say there.
If I see a compass here, I'm going to laugh. Alright, big key. That's actually useful.
Now, 4 small keys in the front means that there's 2 in the back. I don't remember the counts for whether or not the back is... Well, there's no small keys on the right, so literally nothing in this dungeon but Helmasaur and the big chest are boat locked. Everything else in logic... Well, I say that. We don't have a lamp. But everything else kind of in logic.
Yeah, without the fire source, everything's going to be in logic. The Dark Maze, obviously, specifically requires the lamp, and the Rupee Room that we're probably going to see first here on P-Train's side requires either the lamp or the fire rod. So, technically out of logic till we get one of those, but that's not going to stop our runners.
Okay, so everything left in this dungeon is either a compass or an item. That's 1. And 2 junk items in the Rupee basement.
Alright, so at this point, Desert and Eastern are starting to sound louder in my head for potential stuff.
Yeah, because P-Train has checked every in-logic chest in Palace of Darkness. Like, actually, this Harmless Hellway chest was the last in-logic one he did. So,
yep, because they don't expect you to hammer jump.
They don't expect you to hammer jump. They don't expect you to navigate dark rooms without a way to light them up. Although, honestly, at this point, hammer jump isn't even breaking logic or sequence breaking. It's just doing the room backwards.
Yep, as we get our 3rd shield there. So that's nice, I guess. And another 20 rupees, so only 1 more item left here. Or wait, or is that the compass? We haven't seen the compass yet, have we?
It's either the compass or an item.
Cool. So Helmasaur might have something and might not.
We'll know fairly shortly here. P-Train maybe slightly trying to reorient himself here.
Yeah, I think... No, never mind. I was going to say, I think we're good now, but I'm not sure that's the case.
Now, he's looking for the chest in the top left of the maze. Meanwhile, Yagamoth is doing the same mimic clip P-Train did earlier. He's having a significantly slower time of it, unfortunately. But let's see, I think he's... Yeah, there we go. And P-Train is unfortunately lost and going to leave that last chest behind. We won't know if it was a 50-50. Well, it was a 50-50 between a compass or an item, but we won't know what it is. Maybe Yagamoth will be able to get there and show us. Also, chat was talking about the Ether Medallion lighting up the room. The way the Ether Medallion would help in there is that it would freeze the enemies and let you use those as guideposts to get through the room. Unfortunately, P-Train had already killed everything in the room, so Ether would do absolutely nothing for him by the time chat was recommending it.
Yep, it would just be flashy, circly, icy, and then nothing. Alright, Yagamoth making the same play here, so we will see. Hopefully we'll get that 3rd item out of here.
It's also worth noting, just if you've got the big key and a small key like Yagamoth does here, the first time you enter the bridge room, hammer jumping is always the correct choice. Like it will always save you time, rather than having to either save and quit out of that room or backtrack out of that room. Yagamoth opting to use the B as his semi-guide there, telling him where the enemies used to be, and it is just the compass that P-Train left behind.
All right, so yeah, we are looking basically at Eastern, Desert, and Purple Chest at this point.
Yep. Eastern is 2 or 3 items, depending on whether Armos has one. Desert is anywhere from 0 to 2, depending on how the keys lay out and what the boots requirement is. And Purple Chest is guaranteed 1 item. So let me ask you, Hammer, if you're playing this seed, which of those do you choose first?
Okay, so personally, I think I would do Desert first, if only because at this point, with so few locations we have left, and the potential of Eastern having 0 items in Logic, that's scary, and that's going to be a long check. Especially if I get through there and I've only gotten 1 item out that's not locked behind a dark room or something of that nature. So now I have to go finish it, but I'm almost certain that I'm not going to get my progression or my intended progression from Eastern. Whereas Desert, if it's locked, is going to be relatively quick. Like, you're going to look at it, boom, there's a key there. Okay, now I know I'm done. No big deal. You can get in and out of that. As for the Purple Chest, man, I have no idea. I would have probably already done it, to be fair, just to get rid of that location, so I didn't have to worry about any part of the Smith chain. But I would probably, if given this choice, do Desert, and then the Purple Chest, and then Eastern.
Looks like P-Train agrees with you, though he still has Skull Woods on the table as well. And if the progression's here, then missing those mitts is probably not going to hurt him that bad.
Yeah, that's fair. I think Yagamoth is making the Purple Chest play. Oof, and there it is.
That's a find. Now, what does that... Okay, actually, not having the mitts may bite him now if he immediately follows that mirror to Death Mountain. Yeah, P-Train is going up the mountain without the mitts when we know they're available, so he's not going to be able to get the 2 chests in Super Bunny Cave, and not going to be able to learn what the Turtle Rock Medallion is. This ranges from either super unfortunate to always lucky, never punished, depending on what's in the Dark World there.
Yeah, I was going to say, this could be a situation where it helps him again, because it could give him less checks to worry about. But we'll see. Because those mitts are in Logic, so at some point, the seed's going to be like, okay, I mean, you got everything, just you're going to have to go get those mitts to get anything else, bud. And actually, if there's something here on the Purple Chest, we'll have an idea of that, which there's not. So far, the mitts have been completely and totally useless for Yagamoth.
That is good for P-Train. But Dark Death Mountain is still always going to be a concern there, just because of the number of items on it. Especially if, for some reason, the seed is laid out in a way that requires an early Turtle Rock dip.
Yep, that is a good point. Thus far, though, I think I'm not too worried about it, if just because we don't have boots, we don't have hookshot, and we don't have the Cane of Samaria. So in terms of the Dark World stuff that we'd actually be able to do, we're basically limited to Super Bunny, and then getting knowledge about Turtle Rock, which would be nice, but again, isn't the end of the world. And then the Spike Cave, which our runners were both able to do already. So we're only really looking at 2 items right now. Obviously, that could change really quickly if we do get one of those mentioned items that I said before. But right now, we're okay.
Yeah. And we won't be able to learn whether it's ultimately okay until Yagamoth gets to the mountain, but we did see P-Train get hard locked out of Tower of Hera. He doesn't have a fire source to light up the torches in the basement, does not have the hookshot to do the Hera potclip, so he had no choice but to leave. That's a
I
little
think that
spooky.
might be a situation of the key being under the mat.
Possibly, but it does also open up Misery Mire for us as soon as we find the boots or the hookshot. And I'm expecting one of them in this cave.
You'd think they'd be around here somewhere, wouldn't you? Although, to be fair, another thing that mirror opened up is our favorite 6-item location that you were talking about earlier, that everyone enjoys going into at all times.
I object to that. Without the hookshot, it's at most a 4-item location.
That's a fair point, but it's still there.
Yeah, you're right. It is there. We can get to the front part of it at least, but yeah. We've got overworld locations too.
You're enthusiastic.
We've got overworld locations. Yeah, just look at the Bombos tablet. Look at the cave south of the Grove, the so-called Cave 45. Look at the Graveyard Ledge. Look at all of those before Swamp Palace, in my opinion.
Oh no, I don't disagree at all. I'm just saying it's there.
Yeah, it's there. P-Train has cleared the Light World side of the mountain now. Let's see where he is off to. I'm going to imagine it's those overworld mirror checks for him. At this point, the ideal for him is probably Skull Woods to Graveyard Ledge. Although getting the mitts out of Skull Woods may drag him down to Smith's instead.
Yeah, but with the mirror and the flute, it's going to be a much faster set of checks for him than it would for Yagamoth.
Yes and no. Yagamoth was able to save the purple chest and combine that with a quick walk over to Desert Palace. So I would not say he lost a significant amount of time there, especially since he had the flute to turn in the Smith after the save and quit.
That is a fair point. It does look like we're about to get our mitts on P-Train's side, though, which is not a bad thing at all. And actually, in just a couple moments here on Yagamoth's side, we will be able to see how much of a bad idea not coming here was for P-Train.
Yep, extra trips up the mountain are slow, and they add up quickly if you have to make them. But if there's nothing of serious note in the Super Bunny Cave, then P-Train could just maybe put off the second Death Mountain trip until he's got, say, the hookshot and the cane. And then he can do Turtle Rock or something.
Yeah, because right now, even though those mitts theoretically give us access to the last 3 dungeons vanilla-wise, being Ice, Mire, and Turtle Rock, we can't actually do anything in any of those dungeons right now, given our lack of other items. So, that hasn't become a factor yet.
Yeah, and at this point, just gotta wait patiently to see when they do become factors, because, like you said, neither runner can get past the first room of Misery Mire. You need Bombos or Fire to kill Freezors. P-Train's about to be done with his Skull Woods dip, at least. This was a relatively fast one. Also, just to clarify for chat, we saw an item in the very first chest of Skull Woods. We did not check the torch, but that is literally the only other available location before you get any keys. Therefore, a key of some sort is guaranteed on the Desert Palace torch, and we cannot get any more items in that dungeon until we find the boots.
Yep. Meanwhile, I don't think P-Train was counting, because he's still checking stuff.
He must not have then. That's the only real explanation there, because the 2 items there were in adjacent rooms. And that's bad for P-Train. That's a fire source. Yagamoth can go back to Hera and get the crystal and the last item out of it. And he can get in general, fire-locked stuff now. Like imagine, say, Fire Rod on left side of Misery Mire. That's the sort of thing that this opens up.
Yeah, but it hasn't done it yet. So what are we looking at right now? Or we still need we can still clear Hera. That's obviously the biggest thing on the docket that Yagamoth can do, the P-Train cannot. We're gonna see a check here of the way out of the way graveyard ledge. And honestly, if there's something here, that could be a huge advantage for P-Train, especially if there's not something vital in Hera. Like, that crystal's nice, but if there's nothing that immediately leads to right now that's up here, then it's not going to be an urgent sort of need. Oh, boy.
Yeah. Like, this is definitely very far from... I would even say it's not really a big advantage to Yagamoth, just having that lamp. Although it is a lot bigger as a fire source than it is as a light. But there's still a lot of room for P-Train to find something. Actually, this is another mirror lock location. Yagamoth's already been to the Mire area, but he came without the mirror, wasn't able to check Checkerboard Cave. If there's something in here, who knows when he'll get back around to this. Same concept as Graveyard Ledge, really.
Yep, and Bombo's tablet as well. Although, since we haven't seen Swamp yet, that's still probably going to be routed in fairly quickly. Alright, so we're going to get new information on both sides here. P-Train's going to go ahead and grab us whatever is in Checkerboard Cave, and then Yagamoth is going to give us a couple more checks here in Hera.
Yeah, we saw an item in the front, so only one of these checks is going to be an item. But one of them is going to be an item. And that's what's spooky if you're P-Train right now.
Oh boy.
Okay, suddenly the lack of fire just got a lot more spooky. Luckily, it doesn't block anything in terms of Hera, as we see the red rupee there as the second item. And Misery Mire itself is really only a 2-item dungeon plus the green pendant. But that is not an appealing dip at all to P-Train when he can't light the torches and get 2 of the chests.
Reg, did you just say that not having a fire source upon referencing being able to get into Mire, did you just call that spooky? Because if you did, that's a bad pun.
Pun maybe or maybe not intended.
I feel like I'm a bad influence on you. I'm sorry, everyone.
Yeah. P-Train needs to flood the dam before he can go into Swamp Palace, but he is taking that hook shot to the far more reasonable 6-item check that gives a crystal at the end, instead of the 0 to 2-item check that gives a pendant at the end. The Yagamoth is actually going to Checkerboard Cave as his first overworld mirror check, so he's not missing that hook shot.
Yeah,
not sure
definitely...
if Swamp... Sorry, go on.
No, you're good. I was like, that is definitely a bullet dodged.
Yeah, because that location is well and truly isolated for him, especially without the boots. But it's also not the slowest check in the world, as we just saw. I would expect Swamp Palace out of it from him as well, just because the full clearable crystal and a lot of items. Yeah, and that's the flute. That's not Quake, so he's not taking it into Mire. And there's the boots.
Ooh, hello, boots. Alright, and had those boots for not even 5 seconds, and we're making use of them with a hammer dash.
I love that specific hammer dash.
I always have so much difficulty lining it up. I get the feeling it's not that hard and I'm just bad, but these guys do it pretty much every time, and I always get sideswiped by something when I do it.
I will call out the area that's getting flooded right now that had a key. P-Train walked up, hammered the pot, and dashed out. That is, in fact, how you do that room. So if you're doing it any other way, you're doing it slow. Please stop. Of course, when I say that, that assumes that you have all the usual vanilla equipment for that, specifically the boots.
You heard it here first, guys. You're doing it wrong. Gotta go fast.
Yeah. Anyways, we still need several items at this point, but P-Train is going to the back, not doing left side yet. Remains to be seen if he'll go back in for it, but this is the route I would expect regardless with no big key in the first couple checks. Because you're going to have to come back with the big key anyways, may as well just do left side at the time.
Yep, at this point we are still missing 2 rods, the bow, the Cane of Samaria, and maybe Bombos, depending on what we need for Turtle Rock and where that fire rod is.
Yep. A fire rod in or behind Ice Palace would immediately necessitate that Bombos, so even if Turtle Rock doesn't need it. I think we've only seen a compass and a big key as far as dungeon items go in Swamp so far. So still a map and 2 items between big chest and left side.
Yep. So it'll be an interesting. Well, I feel like P-Train is going to come back in regardless.
Yeah,
because
just counting how many
the big
items.
Chest. Oh, here we go.
This strat is super hard, by the way. You've got to press like 3 buttons more or less simultaneously, and it's really obnoxious. So shoutouts to P-Train, even if it wasn't the perfect 0 cycle, still very well done.
Alright, in a little over 55 minutes, we are only sitting on crystal number 2 for P-Train, so this seed is being rather leisurely with its pacing thus far.
Yeah, I would say that's a good word for it. Like, nothing has really been in silly, out-of-the-way locations so far that these runners would miss or have missed. Lamp potentially accepted. But it hasn't exactly been the fastest of seeds either. It's made the runners go places for their items.
I mean, honestly, I wouldn't even call Lamp in a bad location. It's because I mean, it's something the P-Train's going to get very soon. Actually, with that hook shot, you've now unlocked all of Hookshot Cave as well, which turns Dark Death Mountain from 2 items and Knowledge of Turtle Rock to 6 items and Knowledge of Turtle Rock.
Yeah, definitely a more appealing play to him now than it was before that hook shot, but something that he did miss on his first trip. So, and that's really the rudest this seed has been so far, I would say.
Yep, on the flip side, the fact that Yagamoth is now sitting on the other end might be less inclined to go back up for only those 4 item locations, especially knowing that he's going to have to come back up for Turtle Rock anyway. So that might be rude in the other way for Yagamoth.
Yeah, that does presume progression in Hookshot Cave, which 4 items, pretty decent chance at that. But let's see what's on the left side here first, is neither runner is leaving that behind. And then I am interested in what Yagamoth's next move will be, because he's got a few options there. I think they mostly boil down to Eastern Palace, Misery Mire, or Hookshot Cave, though.
So at this point, I wouldn't be surprised to see. So were I in? Oh, that's a nice find.
That makes the mountain a lot more attractive because you can at least get in the door of Turtle Rock now.
It does. Honestly, on Yagamoth's side specifically, I wouldn't be surprised to see a Bombos tablet check. because we are right there, and then Boots locations right afterwards. It's quick. We can save and quit, start from Sanctuary, knock those two out of the way, just get them done.
Yeah, Boots locations totally slipped my mind, but those are two pretty much whenever you want checks, really. You just save and quit for them, and they're right there, so no reason not to do them immediately, like you said.
So between the hookshot, the boots, and the Cane of Samaria, this also does actually officially open up the Mire dungeon itself for contemplation.
Yeah. The cane only blocks the boss, but it is the green pendant, so even if Vitreous isn't holding an item directly, he is holding one indirectly via that. So that's definitely something you're not going to complain about having if you need to go into Mire this seed.
Yeah, definitely. So on this side here, we're going to see a whole bunch of checks on P-Train's side, actually, because as soon as he gets that lamp with the mirror, he's going to be able to go ahead and just knock out Hera as well.
Yeah, and I am expecting Turtle Rock to not be Bombos here, just because that seems to be the way the seed's developing, is P-Train is stuck on that somehow? That's silly.
Well, you see, the dead rock encased the very back of his right heel, and he just couldn't unstuck it. Oh boy, no turtle rock yet.
Wow, I feel silly. I'm actually shocked by that.
Oh, I am too. That's why I laughed. I did not anticipate that. I fully expected it to be Quake, because that's what we found here in the Paradox Cave. Although we could still find Bombo sitting, in Hookshot Cave. That is still very much a possibility.
Yeah, and Yagamoth's actually coming back to the mountain himself for these 4 checks, choosing them over anything else.
Interesting. I don't know that I would do that in his situation. I mean, it's not a bad play at all, and it is definitely 4 checks and potentially being able to go into Turtle Rock, which we know he can't do, but he doesn't. Oh boy, and it's a good check to do. Oh my goodness. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else for us? Ice Rod, maybe? Okay, thank goodness.
So yeah, this is definitely always lucky, never punished on P-Train's side. Actually, that Fire Rod pull, well, we already saw the ped, but it does let us get all 3 pendants. There's 1 item in Desert, there's 0 left in Skull Woods, there's 2 in Mire. Take your pick. Where do you want to go? If you go to Skull Woods, you're silly.
Let's start with Hera.
Yeah, Hera's the crystal. Yagamoth's already done it, so P-Train's just making up time here, really. And actually, P-Train's going to save a lot of time here, because the item is not in the big chest, so this Hera pot, which he did very cleanly, he's just not going to have to sit through that tile room.
Yep, and that bow gives us access to actually finish Eastern and Pod. And this will be the first time that our runners will be in Eastern. They will be able to clear it. Pod was a double dip, but not really a big deal. Since, there was, we had to dip something at that point. So we're going to get 2 more crystals knocked out of the way from Yagamoth, and that's exactly where he's going. So yeah, this seed has gone for a bit less of a leisurely stroll. I think we're at a jogging pace at this point.
Yep, and if that Ice Rod shows up somewhere, we are breaking out into a full sprint. And between Eastern having 3 items and Pod still having 1 on Helmasaur, we've got 4 shots at it. That ain't too bad. Although we do need Bombos too. I let that slip my mind for a sec.
We do. And honestly, at this point, I feel like both of our runners are saying, all right, give me the Ice Rod and just put Bombos wherever. Because having to make that choice, do I go into Turtle Rock without the Ice Rod or do I not, is honestly a terrifying choice.
Yeah, I don't think the runners find it quite as terrifying as normal people would, because from what I've seen And even when I have raced myself, the general mentality when you're racing seems to be, all right, I'll go for it. If it's here, then I'm in great shape. If not, there's a decent shot my opponent did too under the same mentality. Because Ice Rod and Turtle Rock is a common gamble to make in high-level racing.
That's a fair point, but on the flip side, I don't know if it's just, how my brain's working, but it seems like V31, that doesn't pay off as much as it did in the previous version. Obviously, I don't have any real numbers to back that up. It seems like a lot of people are making that play, and it's not working out to their advantage.
Yeah. Somebody in chat counted and said that there's a 40-second difference between the two runners right now. And if you look over their tracker, they've got these same things lit up across the board. Like, exactly the same trackers right now.
Yeah, outside of that cape sitting on P-Train's side, which I'm pretty sure we did have a check of the bumper ledge, and it was nothing. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I totally skipped over the cape there, even though I saw it. That's my bad. But that's still, you're right, bumper ledge is nothing, so that's not going to come into play this seed.
Yeah, so functionally they have the same inventory. The cape is nice, could come in handy in an absolute pinch, but it's not going to give us anything progression-wise because we already know what it leads to. So,
yep, and the most common use of the cape as a safety among top-level runners is Master Sword Ganon. We're already beyond the Master Sword, so that's not a big loss.
Yep, speaking of Helmasaur is down here, so that's going to be another crystal, and then we're going to actually finally get to see what's in Eastern. And this is where the metagame comes in, because if there's like something in Eastern, both of our runners could feel, let's say, not great about taking an hour and 10 minutes to get here. Obviously, with the two main items we have left being Ice Rod and Bombos, that's not going to be too bad, but if you're feeling like the Ice Rod might be in Turtle Rock and you get the Bombos, it's a thing.
Yeah, but if the Ice Rod's in here, I don't think you feel bad about pulling it this late at all. Actually, you might even look at it as an advantage if you're pulling it this late, because you're coming in here with the bow, grabbing that Ice Rod on your single dip of the dungeon. And your opponent, if they already had it, would be double dipping this dungeon. That is time loss by definition.
That's a fair point. When I'm racing, I tend to think less in terms of logic and more in terms of, I'm just going to lose this race. Let me think about all the ways I could have lost this race.
Yeah. Top level runners are not quite like that. Although, I do know that some of them have more pessimistic mentalities than others, which I would argue could be a benefit. It keeps you on your toes.
Yep. Speaking of, so far we have one of our three items. Eastern has still yet to divulge two of them. Although we do have a chance for that vanilla big key location not being required. Well, never mind.
Actually, wasn't that Compass Big Key map in the first three checks?
It was, but you could have still had no item back there and just had a 50-50 gamble for it, which, well, seeing the map there takes that gamble completely and totally out. And actually, seeing first three dungeon items sitting there would mean that you'd only be able to get one item in here without a fire source. So had they come in here early, there would have only been one item in logic for them to grab.
Yes, that's correct. I would strongly argue at this point we are very much past the point of logic mattering, because we have the fire rod and the items we're searching for are Bombos and the Ice Rod. Those items are really not restricted by logic in the sense that you're discussing here.
Yeah, that is a fair point. I was just leaning back to our prior discussion of, where would you go first in terms of desert, purple chest, and Eastern. And this is one of those situations where Eastern was much less of a payoff were you doing it before fire sources than it could have originally seemed.
Yeah, especially since we had that discussion pre-hook shot, pre-boots, pre-fire rod. And Yagamoth skipped the big chest. It only had a red rupee in it, so he's not losing out. But that... I really can't see that as anything other than an error of some sort. Because I can't come up with any reason to do that. He knows it has an item because he's already seen both the map and compass.
Yeah, I don't know. My only assumption is that he thinks he got it the first go-round. And thankfully there's nothing there, or else that would be just a literal nightmare. Because I think Yagamoth thinks that he grabbed everything out of here.
Yeah. The good news is that won't bite him. Oh, hey, that's a bow location.
So there's something delightfully ironic about that. One of the lovely V31 changes, if you're fairly new to it, is that we have progressive bows, which means the first bow you get is going to be the bow, and the second bow you get is going to be the silver, so you don't have to run around Hyrule with the silver arrows and nothing to shoot them with anymore. It also allows for something silly, like Armos having an actual bow.
Yep. Or it just allows, like, Sanctuary and Link's House Chest to both have bows, and then depending on where you start, one's your bow and the other's your silvers.
Alright, so we are going to get those boots locations for Yagamoth. And the fact that we're doing them in the light world means that Yagamoth is probably not going to see that cape at any point from Graveyard Ledge, but again, another location we don't really have to worry about unless Yagamoth decides to go there.
Yeah. Like, at this point, the main time loss comes from what locations one runner will do that the other one won't. Or locations that one runner's done, like Yagamoth's already done the Smiths, and P-Train will lose time by going back to them. Because right now, this race is close, especially since I'm expecting Yagamoth to flute the 8 here and go right into ice.
Yep, and your expectation was absolutely correct.
So yeah, what's the difference here? Like 30 seconds at most?
Yep, so best case scenario, we get both items out of here. The chances of that happening are obviously fairly low. So I hesitate to say it, and if it ends up biting our runners, then I'm going to say sorry in advance. But I'd just like to point out that we haven't seen a fetch quest yet.
Yeah, the book kind of counts as a fetch quest, although in this case it was required to get into desert for the mirror. Although I guess if I'm using the term like that, then every item in the game can be considered a fetch quest. And the game itself is just one big fetch quest.
I think someone described Rando as going to the place you don't want to go to get the thing. So yes, I feel like that's a fairly accurate statement. And yeah, that's the reason why I didn't classify Book as a fetch quest in this case, is because it was actually required for Desert. With the mirror being there...
Yeah, with the mirror being there was no way around using the book to get into Desert this seed. But... let's see, I think that set up for the bomb jump. Yeah, that's good on P-Train's side. Yagamoth's not going to be very far behind on that. And that bomb jump that P-Train just did, it's one of the most fundamental speedrunning tricks of this game because it lets you save all the run around and loot back in this dungeon. And it's just satisfying to get. Just watching Link fly across. Yagamoth's not doing the bomb jump. Which actually, this is fine. He has the Cane of Samaria, so he also doesn't need to do all the loot back and whatnot. And he is committing to full clearing the dungeon by doing this. He loses no time by not jumping here.
Yeah, which honestly in this situation doesn't matter because we are looking for items, and we're looking for 2 of them, so we're going to be clearing everything in Ice Palace. I actually, for the first time, less than a week ago, got my first Ice Palace bomb jump, and I can confirm it is a lot of fun. Hello, Bombos!
Okay. So, Ice Rod and Turtle Rock, anybody?
I mean, it could also be sitting in mire.
Yeah, it could. I would actually expect both runners to choose Turtle Rock over Mire in this situation, though. Just gamble on the best case scenario.
Yeah, and actually, if one of them doesn't, that's kind of a look into their mental attitude towards the race. You know, if someone goes, I'm going to go do Mire, then they're probably feeling behind because most people in that instance would choose Turtle Rock over Mire.
Yep. Well, I say most people. Most racers would. P-Train actually took a bit of a route through the tall icy room there to get the iced tea chest early. Is rewarded for it with the third item in the dungeon. Half Magic's a good find.
Yep, which means this is going to be a whole lot of nothing on Yagamoth's side. So this Ice Palace clear is actually quite a bit quicker on P-Train's side. Not because of the bomb jump, just because of the routing he chose to get through here.
Yep. Yagamoth is taking a significantly slower path to the iced tea room, so he is losing time here. And that's after he spent time on the boots checks, which caused him to come into this dungeon after P-Train to begin with. Like, they entered the dungeon about 25 seconds apart, but P-Train's already dropping into the boss, and Yaga hasn't even dropped down to that floor yet. And there's Cold Stare down for P-Train. It got out of the corner a little bit, but Fire Rod still knocked it down really nice and recovered. So not 100% perfect, but still very well done.
Yep, and that's what half Magic Fire Rod is for, cleaning up mistakes.
Yep. Yagamoth dropping into the fight as P-Train is exiting it. So yeah, the time difference about doubled there from when Yagamoth entered the dungeon, although he had a significantly faster Cold Stare fight. So maybe closer to like 35 seconds at this point.
Yep, and since P-Train is going to be checking these boost locations, that's time that Yagamoth is going to get back, and they're going to be right on each other's heels about.
Yep, and that goes back to what we were both saying earlier about the time loss is the extra checks you make at this point, especially the ones the other runner has already done. That's why you can't really say either runner's in the lead at this point until we see the Ice Rod. There's still too many decisions left to be made.
Oh boy.
Yagamoth making a liar.
Oh, alrighty. So we have one item in Desert, and we have 2 items in Mire. Oh, this is going to be fun.
Actually, hold on. There's a green pendant as well. So Mire is 3 items. That's 4 items total.
Oh.
Turtle Rock, as a full dungeon, Turtle Rock is 5 items. If Trinex is holding one, that's also 4 items total.
But does that include Mimic Cave?
Oh, no, you're right. It does not include Mimic Cave. That is my mistake. So it's still 4 items versus either 5 or 6. The density favors Turtle Rock here, but if you're wrong, that's going to sting, because Turtle Rock is a very long linear dungeon that you're going to have to essentially do twice. So I think that this is the decision right here that will ultimately wind up deciding the race.
Yes, this is outside of something terrible happening to one of our runners. This is going to be the end-all, be-all for who's going to win this race. So, who's ahead? We'll tell you in about 5 minutes when we find the Ice Rod, even if it takes that long. For those of you who are asking, there are no items left in Skull Woods, and along that line of thought, the PED was checked. It is 300 rupees.
Yep. There is one location at this point, though, that we haven't considered. There is the Grove Ledge Cave, south of the Grove, the so-called K45. Have not seen that yet. If Ice
Ooh,
Rod's
that
just
is a good
sitting
point.
there, then both of these runners are going to feel really bad.
I feel like if it's sitting there and Yagamoth does it before going up into Turtle Rock, it won't feel terrible. Yes, you last locationed it outside of Turtle Rock, but at least you didn't double dip Turtle Rock. There's that saving grace at the minimum. For P-Train now, anything other than Ice Rod being here is going to feel like it's going to feel like the end of your tournament.
Yeah. It's also, Chad is saying, but as a reminder, we have only seen one item in Desert so far. We saw the mirror on both runners' first dip in. Landmola's has the second. Yagamoth chose to come right into Misery Mire instead of killing the Landmolas for that.
It's not a bad play. I feel like in this case, Yagamoth is kind of metagaming a bit of P-Train's probably going to go do the Ice Rod and Turtle Rock thing. So if it's there, I've lost. But if it's not there, then outside of something ridiculous happening, I have almost definitely won. So it doesn't really matter in what order you choose to do things at this point, because even if it's the last place that Yagamoth checks that isn't in Turtle Rock, he's still going to have a sizable lead.
Yep, that is completely accurate. And then there's also just the issue of it's a bit of a walk to Landmola's for one item. Meanwhile, you've got Misery Mire here that's got 3, including the eventual green pendant turn-in, which is just a flute to 5 away. So he's choosing the density here.
Yes, it will be interesting to see if Yagamoth goes green pendant before Landmo, though.
I would not expect him to, just given how many extra transitions that is, having to flute and then flute back to the desert.
I wouldn't expect it either, but people do weird stuff when they're under pressure. Hey, it's the boomerang we didn't want to see.
Red Boomerang's good if you get it real early, because it can help with splash deletions, but we're a bit past that point in the race. But was that the first item we saw in Turtle Rock?
I believe so. I don't think we've gotten anything out of T-Rock yet, so it is backloaded, which isn't uncommon.
Chat's saying that there was a heart piece in the Firelock. I'm presuming it was the Firelock side, although I've lost count already. But regardless, that's just further reducing the chances we'll see an Ice Rod. Just fewer chances for it to be there.
Yep, meanwhile, P-Train had a little bit of fun with that pokey. Did not want to go down.
Yeah, those enemies aren't very fun. Tempered Sword is pretty nice because you can usually hit them with 2 spins and put an end to it that way. But when that doesn't work...
Yagamoth, what are you doing?
I haven't seen the big key yet.
Ah, never mind. That's what Yagamoth's doing.
Yeah, he was trying to skip the cutscene chest and hope that the big key wasn't there, which turned out not to be. P-Train is not hammer dashing out of Mimic Cave. That makes me a little sad because we miss out on that cool animation. And Yagamoth is not going for Vitreous.
Interesting. So skipped both Landmo and Vitreous and is now flying away. Are we going to get a potion?
I get the idea just behind having that in general, but I'm not sure where he's going with this specifically.
Alright, so at this point, P-Train is officially in the lead, regardless of where the Ice Rod is.
I mean, you say that, but he would still if it's in Mire and he goes there, or even if it's not and he goes there, he would still full clear the front of it and give pretty much all of that time back.
Okay, so allow me to amend. Unless it's sitting in K45, P-Train is likely going to have an advantage. If it's in K45, then it's pretty much anyone's game, because that is a location that has been orphaned to heck and back.
Yeah, and I don't know what's going through Yaga's mind with both of those boss skips, especially knowing one's the green pendant. But he's made his decision, so let's see him stick to it at this point as we find our gold sword. Also, chat's calling out the mirror shield. Laser skips are faster than using the mirror shield. They are definitely faster. P-Train's doing that correctly.
Okay, so let's start thinking, where can P-Train go that will allow him to maintain that mirror portal? Because that's going to be the last gasp. Let's try to at least make sure that I don't lose this portal.
It's basically Misery Mire, and then you die in the overworld after clearing or leaving that dungeon.
So can we discuss the fact that Yagamoth just used bombos in the front of Turtle Rock?
Yeah, I don't know. It happens.
Alright, so at this point, I would be surprised to see P-Train do the same thing Yagamoth did, so we're going to get basically 2 dungeon clears here, I would anticipate, from P-Train.
Yep. It is. If he dies, well, if he tries to preserve his portal here, then he won't be able to get into Desert. But at this point, when you're thinking from that angle, you're basically hoping that the Ice Rod is here in Misery Mire itself. That way you don't have to use the mirror to get back to the light world.
Right. And even at that point, he could still take a Death to the Murderdactyl outside. And then get into Desert using the book. I don't know in terms of time save how much time that would waste and if that's worth it for dealing with it there, but I don't know, if that's a logically sound decision to make, or if it's better at that point just to go ahead and do Turtle Rock again.
My intuition says that it would be faster to do that than to run all the way through Turtle Rock again, but I really have no idea, actually.
Yeah, it's not something that's often checked in terms of... It's not something that even comes up very often in Rando, and it never comes up at all in NMG or any run similar because we know where everything is. So that's kind of one of the not well-known comparisons, I'll say. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out. Also, alternatively, we could literally just see it on Vitreous here, as I don't know if that was intentional on Yagamoth's side or not.
I don't think so, just because hitting that switch repeatedly is incredibly obnoxious and slow. Also, since chat is asking just about some of the out-of-the-way locations, we've seen the Bombos tablet. I believe it was the 10 bomb pack. But both runners did check that after Swamp Palace. Peg got checked very early. Honestly, I think it was about an hour ago at this point, and it's just cash. Yagamoth, I think, I know one runner, I think it was Yagamoth, has done the pyramid and the catfish area. Both of those were junk. And actually, no, I think P-Train's done the pyramid and the catfish. Yagamoth has done the smiths. Regardless, all junk across the board.
Yeah, in terms of stuff we don't know, we're basically down to Green Pendant Vitreous and the item on Landmo, and then K45.
Yeah, that is well and truly it at this point. We've seen all the other usually orphan locations. We've seen Spike Cave. We've seen the Graveyard Ledge. We've seen Left Side Swamp. We've seen everything in Skull Woods. Both items are in the front there. We've seen everything we can in Turtle Rock. It's a mess.
So P-Train is continuing on. Okay, so we are going to get the green pendant is going to be given to us at the least. We may not see it turned in depending on whether or not P-Train goes directly to Desert from here or decides to do a death warp to get to preserve that portal. Because at that point, it doesn't really matter. You might as well just turn in the green pendant first because you're death warping. But I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, at this point, I sort of want to see it on Vitreous just to put everything to rest. But we've still got a few more rooms before we can even get to that fight.
Oh, see, I want to see it on K45 just to watch our runners really scream.
Yeah, I don't like last locationing things. It's not fun.
Oh, I don't like doing it either, but in this instance, I wouldn't be the person doing it, so it's fine.
Well, Gold Sword plus Cape means we're going to see a lesser used Vitreous strat, especially since he's got the silver arrows. But that's the small eyes down all pretty quick.
Yeah, that's eyeball gelato in 2 easy steps.
Okay, so that is... Okay, so Yagamoth skipping... I miscounted items in Mire myself. Yagamoth skipping Vitreous makes a little more sense now, but it's still a green pendant, so that's iffy.
Oh, I knew that he'd gotten both items. Are we getting a hobo? Yeah, this is gonna be a hobo check from Yagamoth.
Yeah,
oh, never mind.
P-Train did. This is the Pyramid Catfish place.
Alright, so Yagamoth is doing nothing at this point but wasting time, since we know he's not going to get anything out of here. P-Train, on the flip side, is giving us a new check. So, will Green Pendant be our answer?
Yeah, and at this point, whoever finds the Ice Rod first is definitively in the lead.
And at an hour, 30 minutes, and 35 seconds, P-Train has found the Ice Rod from Sahasrahla and is definitively in go mode and definitively in the lead.
Yep. Yagamoth isolated Vitreous, and who knows when he'll go back there.
I mean, at this point, we don't have a whole lot left on Yagamoth's side. There's still some stuff. We still do have that K45 check, the Graveyard Ledge check, and then Landmo has an item. But I think other than that, we've pretty much cleared everything.
Yeah, we are running short on locations. He's gonna have to run through Mire again, then go turn it in, and then run through Turtle Rock. But regardless, I think you were saying earlier we had not seen any fetch quests this seed. That does continue to hold true. The mushroom, the powder, the shovel, all dark on the tracker.
Yep, and outside of one of them being in K45 or on Landmo, which I think we're going to get Landmo first, we are not going to see them at all outside of, GT when they're way past being useful. Yeah, so for those of you who are asking and just missed it, P-Train went ahead and murdered Vitreous for the green pendant, and the green pendant turn-in had our Ice Rod. Go figure. So Yagamoth is currently wasting a little bit of time, but I presume the next check is going to be that Vitreous green pendant. So we should get Yagamoth in go mode sooner rather than later.
Yeah. And honestly, I don't like the phrase wasting time for that, because he's still making the checks. Like, he's still advancing the game. But it's not the checks that we know he needs. So it feels a little bad.
No, that's a very fair point. I'm not saying that Yagamoth is not. That was like the worst That's the worst RNG you could get for those pokies when you have a decent sword. But moving on. No, I'm not saying that it's a poor choice. Even I'm just saying that this Landmo kill isn't going to give us anything useful. And worst case scenario could give us something that would lead us astray. Which with 20 rupees, it has not done that. So that's good at least.
Yeah, that's good news. And yeah, you're right. It's just, it feels bad to know that he's checking the locations that we know don't have the item. But just from his perspective, especially not having seen a done yet, obviously, they still could be.
Oh, this is interesting.
Graveyard Ledge?
Yep. So we were putting off Meyer a little bit longer, guys.
Alternatively, I guess this could be Cave 45, but I would expect him to approach that from the south, from the Hype Cave side.
Yeah, my initial thought is that would be a bit more expedient as well.
Similar concept to approaching Kakariko from the south, really.
Yep. Except it's even a bit quicker than that, since it's one less screen transition from that side and one more screen transition from the other.
So, P-Train got the 0 cycle Trinex, which you can only do with the boots and the gold sword. Otherwise, you can't get behind him and do enough damage fast enough. But that's not an easy strat, even with the gold sword. So, very well done on his part. Very nice to see. Very quick boss fight. And that's going to be 7 crystals for P-Train.
Yep, so at this point we have a game to play, and we don't have a whole lot of time to do it in, so I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit quicker this time around. We have 22 chests in Ganon's Tower basement. One of those contains the big key. I should say locations, because it could technically be on the torch as well. Anyways, get your guesses in chat, 1 through 22. Where is that big key location? We do not accept negative numbers, zeros, fractions, decimals, or anything above 22. Good luck and have fun. Reg, what is your guess, my friend?
Well, my go-to is number 10. I'll stick with that.
Alrighty, that works. I am going to go ahead and say... Let's see. I'm going to say 17. I think we're going to have a full right-hand side clear, and I'm calling Bob's chest.
That's always on the table. Full right... Well, right side clears in general are pretty normal if you get a key in the Hope Room. Hey, K45 had our 4th bottle. That's always a little...
Alright, so we have full-on confirmation. No fetch quests today, because we saw everything.
Yep, I guess they've all got to be here in the tower. And with the key in the Hope Room, we are seeing P-Train go off to the right side towards the Compass Room.
Yep, I feel like the two most commonly used strats at this point are either the modified Dark Magician route, where you go to Stelphos Room on the left, and then from that point forward, you do a full, well, not a full right clear, but a right clear up into the Compass Room. Goodness gracious, that just is not. There we go. And the other option being a full right clear if you can, and then just go full left afterwards.
Yeah, I feel like the Hope Room into full left that used to be the standard has fallen a little bit out of favor. Although I still mostly see it when somebody does go Hope Room first, looking to do the right side Compass Room start, and then gets no small keys.
Speaking of fetch quests, there is one. That's check number 7 for us.
That is the least useful fetch quest. Only really good for fake powdering as a standalone item.
Yep. And here comes the Stelphos Room.
Yeah. Meanwhile, if they were to find the shovel, it shouldn't be an issue this seed. Okay, there's the key. But with the shovel, they could go dig for arrows outside of Ganon's Tower if they see that they're out in the Mimic Rooms, excuse me.
Yeah, that's a good point. I feel like with our runners, though, for both of them, because we've seen it, we'd probably just get some clips. All right, so anyways, that was location number 9.
Yes, and shoutouts to Greg City, who was the first person to guess 9 in chat, along with the numerous other players who also guessed 9. And that's Vitreous down for Yagamoth. Now he's just got to go turn that pendant in, and he will have his Ice Rod be in go mode.
Yep, pretty much last location that, which is really unfortunate, but it's rando, and it happens. And the good news is we get to see a game 3, so that's nice at least.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure every single player that's ever played more than like 2 rando seeds has last location something. So while it does feel bad when it happens to you, and it feels bad to see it happen to a tournament runner in a race, it does happen. So at this point, game is pretty well out of reach, barring a catastrophe that literally nobody would want to see. So at this point, we would be more looking forward to see how Yagamoth recovers from this and can put on a showing in Game 3. Because his execution and his play this seed has been very technically sound. It's basically just been... I would say he made a somewhat iffy decision to skip Vitreous, in my opinion, when he was already in Misery Mire. And that would have outright overturned the race. But... his actual play, there's been nothing to complain about. And other than that, his routing was solid.
Yeah, very much so. It was a very good race all around. It's just a situation of 2 people guessed and 1 person guessed wrong. And that's really all that came down to. Meanwhile, P-Train absolutely obliterated the gauntlet. These rooms are theoretically difficult. That's what I'm told, and that's what I feel when I play them, but I see these other runners do it, and I think that maybe I'm wrong, and somehow these rooms are easier than they look.
Well, when you've got Gold Sword, Silver Arrows, Fire Rod, just from a raw, clear perspective, they are. But even if you go into those rooms without equipment and thinking that, you're not going to do it as fast as these top-tier speedrunners do. They've got those rooms down to a science.
Yes, and the amazing part about that science is that the enemy movements are random. So it's not even as simple as knowing where the runners are going to go, as we are going to get an attempted skip here of... Moldorm had a little bit of a stall there at the end, but still made it over the gap. P-Train making nice use of hover skills there.
Saves him something like 6 seconds. Maybe slightly less since he had already hit Moldorm once while dashing through to get over there.
Hey, either way, you can't have a race without a little bit of hover swag, and the boots were there, so yeah, it works out.
Yeah, we saw both runners show just the ordinary Mimic clip earlier, the difficult one. So, definitely no shortage of fun tech this run. Great setup for a triple there on that phase of Aghanim, but the blue ball said no. So P-Train just grabs a triple here to make up for it. Easy game.
Yep, bit of a slow start there. Had a 0, 1, 2, 3. Still a 4 cycle though, so not bad.
Yeah, 4 cycle is solid. It's not ideal, but it's still solid. You could certainly do worse.
Yeah, especially with blue balls. If you don't get any, then a 4 cycle feels really bad. Or you got some really, really unfortunate sets from the 3 Aghanims. But if you get blue balls, it kind of makes things... Oh man, that was... Speaking of unlucky, there's Yagamoth having a little difficulty through there. As Ganon asks us what kind of burrito we think we are. Reg, do you think you'd be a particular kind of burrito?
Can I say the spicy barbacoa?
I mean, I feel like that one's kind of taken. You might want to go with something different, but I mean, if you're really feeling it, then yeah, we could go with that. That's fine.
I'm really feeling it.
All
That
right,
was
that
pretty
works.
bad. I'm not going to do that again.
Personally, I think I'd be a chicken burrito because I take all the safeties all the time.
Yeah.
Hey, I got a reg laugh. I think that's the first time that's ever happened, and I've calmed like a dozen and a half races with you.
Yeah. Anyways, we've got a race going on. P-Train has gotten through the Ganon warps and skips the torch glitch that he can set up for a double here, and that should... No, that's not going to be the end. I miscounted. I can't count to 4, apparently. But that's Ganon down right around the time that Yagamoth finishes off Trinex. So that's going to be your GGs in chat for P-Train, and getting excited for Game 3.
Yep, very nicely done. Get your GGs in chat for P-Train, finishing in first place with an official SRL time of 1 hour, 43 minutes, and 40 seconds. Meanwhile, right on cue, we've got Yagamoth climbing the stairs for Ganon's Tower.
And we have P-Train here with us for an interview as Yagamoth climbs the tower. So, congratulations, P-Train. We're going to Game 3. Did you have fun with this seed?
I won, so there's that. But I mean, I'm never a huge fan of ice rod hunts. Luckily, this one worked out in my favor.
Yeah, winning always more fun than losing in my experience. Ice rod hunts always never fun in my experience.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting that it was in Meyer. I felt really behind for the majority of the seed. Well, I'll say I felt behind after I dove pod, which had nothing, and then I got lost in the dark maze. I got hit by one of the Kadangos and just lost my place. So I felt kind of behind there, and then when I saw where the mirror was, I was like, "Oh, great! This is horrible." And then I found the mitts, and I was like, "I'm so far behind, it's ridiculous." So when I went to the Meyer area, I basically told myself, I was like, if I come out of here with access to Meyer, I'm immediately going in, because the only chance I have is if Yagamoth, skips something in a pendant dungeon. And then it was Hookshot in Checkerboard Cave, which gave me Swamp. I was like, well, let's go to Swamp, and then I found Kane on the left side, and there was 2 items, and you got the big key on Argus, so I thought there was a good chance Yaga went back for that. But at the same time, I was like, you know what? I'm like, maybe he skipped that, so maybe I'm not doing that bad. And then I felt like I made good, I avoided the Smith chain altogether, so I felt like that was a good play. Or I felt like that was, decent routing, that I'm able to at least cut something from, a full clear of the world. Went into Ice Palace, felt a little weird about it. I was like, maybe I should do boot checks or something like that. But went into Ice Palace, found Bombos, and I was like, oh yeah, 100% I'm going to Rock, just hoping the Ice Rod is there.
Yeah. And a lot of that made sense. Like, I don't have any other words for it. Although I will say that the Swamp Palace dips and the Cane of Samaria, you guys were about 40 seconds different from there all the way until you guys finished Ice Palace, did Bonk Rocks, and King's Tomb. Like, I can't remember which of you, but one of you did the boots checks before Ice, the other did the boots checks immediately after Ice, and that synced up to where you guys were like 30 seconds difference at most at that point in the race. And then you chose Turtle Rock, he chose Meyer, he chose Desert plus Meyer, chose not to kill either boss though. And that's how the story went.
Yeah, so a couple of interesting things about that. Yesterday, I got burned by checking the green pendant, and it's kind of interesting because I think I watched the VOD yesterday, and he entered the Dark World about 4.5 minutes before I did. He also entered GT about 4.5 minutes before I did. So, when you watch it back, we did things in slightly different orders, but really we checked pretty much the same thing. So it's kind of interesting that from Cane of Samaria that we basically stayed, more or less synced up, because that's kind of what happened yesterday. And then next being the irony of yesterday, I did a green pendant, and sunk a lot of time into that check. And then today I made that same gamble, just because I was already in Misery Mire. I'm like, well, if it's a green pendant and I leave it here, I'm literally never coming back here. So I was like, yeah, let's go ahead and do Vitreous. Let's take that gamble. Let's take that green pendant gamble again. And today it was the right call. Yesterday it was a horrible call, but today it ended up being the correct choice.
Yeah, Matt's randomizer for you.
It was honestly kind of baffling because when we saw, so you went up to Turtle Rock and I was like, okay, that's going to be interesting, because then Yagamoth went right to the desert area, and it's like, okay, so it's basically who finds this first is going to have a rather significant lead. And then we saw that it wasn't in Turtle Rocks. We were like, oh, this isn't good. But then Yagamoth just noped right out of Mire, and we were like, wow, okay, why would you do that if it's the green pendant? You're running out of locations outside of Turtle Rock itself, And at that point, if you're Yagamoth, you're probably feeling like if you go ahead and clear everything outside of Turtle Rock and it's in Turtle Rock, you've probably lost. So then Yagamoth goes ahead and does all of Desert, but doesn't get anything for it because the last item was actually on Landmo. So we were just like, wow, okay, he's left both of these dungeons, and then he goes up to Turtle Rock, and it was just, okay, this is insane. So it was really, that end routing was really interesting. Outside of the fact that, obviously Ice Rod hunts are just terrible, terrible things of torture that should not be allowed.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that, because I felt like it was definitely a risk to go up to Turtle Rock. Like, I did the Bonk Rocks and Kingston before going up to Turtle Rock. I thought about maybe checking Smith Chain, but I felt like at that point, especially with Mitz being in Skull Woods, there's a great chance that Yagamoth has already done the Smith Chain. So if Ice Rod is there, I've probably lost anyways. So I went up to Turtle Rock feeling like that was, if you want to call it a gamble, the play of, it had the lesser odds. And then whenever I cleared Turtle Rock and nothing was there, Mire to me was like the obvious call, because it was, I think, the only check I could do and still save my portal. So I went to Mire and didn't find any of the items, and at that point I'm like, yeah, you got to kill Vitreous here. Like, in my position, there's no way you leave Vitreous.
Yeah, and I will say that your read of things was pretty much dead on. Yagamoth went Skull Woods on his first trip to the Dark World and did the Smith as well at that time. He carried the purple chest over. He used the flute to carry it, but he routed that in to go to Desert immediately afterwards. That sort of thing, which was well done and efficient on his part. It just, none of it paid out. Like, the only Mitz locations to see that were relevant were the Dark Mountain and then the Bombos and Ice Palace.
Yeah, and again, the mountain was absolutely loaded for us. Yes, in yesterday's match, the mountain had like bow, something else. It had a ton of items. It was all in Paradox Gate. I think it had bow and flute, something else. And then today it had, bow, fire rod, lamp.
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
Well, it was just kind of interesting, just trying to process all that I had found. I almost actually forgot about the ice rod, because I was like, all right, we just got 3 items. I'm like, are we in go? I'm like, no, we're almost go. And I was like, oh wait, no, ice rod too.
Yeah, the thing that interested me the most is Yagamoth went to the mountain with Mitz but no hookshot, so he got that lamp. And I was fearing that we were seeing a little bit of a repeat of yesterday, where you went up to the mountain with no Mitz, missed the Cane of Samaria until you went back, and then that cost you a little bit of time. Not a huge amount in the end, but a little bit.
Yeah,
Anyways.
It was. It's hard to make decisions on some of these, just because you don't want to make the wrong decision. So part of you is saying, let's wait till I can full clear it, and the other part of you is saying, there's a lot of item density in Paradox, so let's go there immediately.
Yeah. Anyways, Yagamoth has just put Ganon down. He's about to cross the bridge, and he will be finishing with a time of 1 hour, 52 minutes, and 21 seconds. So GG's to him as well. We'll see if we can get him in.
I do, while we're waiting for that, I do have a question for you, P-Train.
Yeah.
If you were a burrito, what kind of burrito would you be?
One of the greatest crimes of my life was when Taco Bell took the cheesy double beef burrito off of their menu. It was $1. It was delicious. I was in college. It saved my life. So if I could be a burrito, it would be a cheesy double beef burrito from Taco Bell.
All right, there we go. Gannon asked, and I figured it would be only polite to do, because Reg and I discussed it, so I figured I would get your opinion on it.
And now we're joined by Yagamoth. GG.
GG.
That seed
Good evening.
didn't quite go your way at the end, which was unfortunate, but you were doing really well, really close race, pretty much right up until that ice rod hunt.
Yeah, that's kind of how the ice run hunt traditionally goes.
Yeah.
Either you get lucky or, well, you don't.
Yeah, I hate it. Trust me.
You should make either hit trying to...
That would be interesting, actually.
Vitor, if you're here, listen to this man.
Either way, GG. I think I would also be a chicken burrito just to catch up on that conversation, because I like all the same.
Gotta get the facts out there. Get that important information out first. Now, GG Yagamoth. It's a good race.
So, second most important piece of information. Until the ice rod hunt started, are you having fun?
Sure. Why not?
Good enough.
The enthusiasm is infectious.
I mean, I figured it's possible to get the mirror significantly earlier than what I did, but at the same time, it was also not too unlikely that it's just like the same for both of us. So I had no idea where I was in the race until I found the ice rod on the left side of the Samari on the left side of swamp, and thought, that could give me an okay chance. And well, then it was just, well, where do you go now? Do you go for the ice rod, which I actually counted items. At the time I left Misery Mire, it was exactly 50-50 on how many locations there were in Turtle Rock versus outside. So I just decided to take a chance and go into Turtle Rock rather than checking anything else.
Yeah. I will say before we talk about the ice rod hunt that the way that this seed played out, basically from the time you guys entered Swamp Palace to the time that you finished Ice Palace in the boots checks, you were no more than 40 or so seconds apart at most.
Nice.
So
I do have a question, Yagamoth. What was your thinking in skipping the green pendant the first go round? Was it just say I have better ways to spend my time, or were you doing the if it's here then I've lost, but I'm okay with that?
Well, it's basically just like there's two methods of thinking about that. For one, chances are if P-Train entered Misery Mire about the time I did, he would have skipped it as well, so I would not have been an automatic loss on that end. The other part is that whether there is something on Green Pendant or not, it's like, 3, 4, 5 minutes spent just for that one item check. I can check like 3 other locations before that. So basically, it's just so much time spent for a single location. I figured that was the gamble rather than leaving it.
That makes sense. My initial thought is that you were thinking, okay, P-Train's probably going to go up the mountain first. So I'm going to go ahead and clear everything else, and then whoever ends up being right is right, no big deal. That's what I thought your mindset was going into Mire, which is why it surprised me when you didn't kill Vitreous.
I see. Yeah, not quite. My main reasoning was just based on the location of the Quake Medallion. I figured there's a pretty good chance that there's something in Misery Mire, and chances were also that P-Train would just double dip Turtle Rock at some point as well, so I figured it's not much time lost if I could just go up there sometime sooner rather than later. So it was basically just about making it a checking enough location that it would be about a coin flip, whether the ice rod would be in Turtle Rock or not.
actually, there is one more thing chat mentioned that I wanted to ask about. Eastern Palace Big Chest. Reasoning or just
Did I
brain
forget
fart,
that?
which happens? Yes.
Oh.
And I think that answers the question.
Okay. Yep. Whoops.
Yeah, you walked right by it the first time, despite all the dungeon items in the first 3 checks. So I was assuming that you would just pick it up after the vanilla big key chest in MG style.
Yeah, that
and
was
whoops.
the plan. Because I figured I can just do like hookshot speed around, but yeah, that's not the first time I forgot.
Yeah,
Man.
I ended up, because of Dark Maze shenanigans, I ended up orphaning the top chest in Dark Maze, but then I ended up killing Helmosaur, so I was able to deduce it was the compass. So I was like, okay, we're good, we're out.
Nice.
So, and I think it was the same thing with Big Chest. I think it had the map or something like that. The Big Chest in the Eastern.
I see. No, I just completely forgot about it. I just assumed I had all items because I usually check. So if
Yeah,
I thought
that-
it was there, I would have lost, guaranteed. Well, I did anyways.
Yeah, it happens sometimes. So it's like game 3. Do you guys have plans for it? I know it's not on the schedule yet, obviously. You need to discuss that?
Yeah, we need to discuss that.
Yeah.
All right. So, Yagamoth, are you willing to share thoughts on potential settings changes so we can know what to look forward to?
I'll either make it standard or I make it 6.6. So I'm not entirely sure yet. I will decide in the next like 5-10 minutes, I think, and then message P-Train up.
All right. Sounds good to me. Should be something to look forward to either way. Assured Sword Standard is definitely a classic combination.
It's
Although
the
I don't
best
know,
standard.
does the uncle give a weapon with Assured Sword Standard? That's not a
He
thing,
should.
is it?
He gives a random
no idea.
item.
Okay.
So because you start with the sword in your inventory, so he gives a random
Yeah.
item. But you aren't able to use your sword until you get whatever random item it is. It might be a rupee, might be something, I don't know. But you can't
Yeah.
use your sword until you actually talk to Uncle.
I hope it's a
Same as
shield.
the classic sword in Link's house before V31.
Yes.
Oh. I think I've said my piece on this seed. Anybody else have anything they want to say or get off their chest before we wrap up?
GG Yaga, I'm looking forward to game 3.
GG, same here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have anything about the race, and you guys both answered my type of burrito question, so my curiosity is satisfied there. For those in chat who are asking, we actually don't have any more races for this tournament on schedule at all. So, unfortunately, the only thing I can tell you is keep track of that schedule, keep an eye on it. More races will pop up. We are far from done. We just don't have anything on the schedule.
We do have things on the larger speed gaming schedule, though. Stuff like Super Mario World, No Cape, No Star World started on both Speed Gaming 3 and Speed Gaming 5 about 20 minutes ago. There's going to be Metroid Fusion on this channel in about 40 minutes. And there's Super Mario Bros. 3 Randomizer on Speed Gaming 2 in about an hour. So if you want any sort of speedrun action, check out the Speed Gaming channels, the one you're on now, and then Speed Gaming 2 through 6. And if you want more Link to the Past Randomizer specifically, we've also got twitch.tv/Link to the Past Randomizer, twitch.tv/Link to the Past Randomizer 2 through 5, and the runners. Shout outs to them as well. They put on the show. Follow them. Their links have been in chat a few times. Let me get them just one more time.
Yep, and speaking of shout-outs to Yoinker's wife, who was the person who went ahead and clicked the buttons for us. Tracking is not easy. If you have not done it before, I've done it a couple times. It's a lot more intensive than you might think, because if you miss something, well, then everyone yells at you. So shout-outs to her for go ahead and pressing those buttons for us.
Yep. And with that, I've been Reg. My partner's been Hammer Bro. I'll give you the last word, Hammer, and I'll see all the rest of you over some other races. This tournament continues to wind down towards the round of 8 and beyond.
Yep, that's about all I got. Only thing at this point, may your seeds not be ice rod hunts, because as we just saw, they're not exactly fun. Have a good night, everyone.